about as an Albertan who works in this province to try at every level to increase the human rights of people in this province in a variety of different forms, why Bill C-389 is so important. I mean, Bill C-389 is effectively a legislated prohibition against transphobia, and that is something that is so desperately important to the community and to the community as a whole, because not only does it potentially allow for protection for the community, it also serves as a very important key in educating the rest of the community about trans Canadians and their issues in our country. You know, some of the people that have spoken against Bill C-389 have suggested, well, we don't need to articulate this particular ground for protection because it's already there in the Charter, and it's read in, and who needs it? Well, I think those of us from Alberta know full well why it is. You need to have this kind of thing read, specifically written out in the documents which protect our human rights. It was Andy, I think, who talked about the Wren decision, 10, 12, 13 years ago now, and talked about how that decision resulted in equal treatment on the basis of sexual orientation being read into all the legislation across the country. Yet in Alberta, our government refused to actually include that ground until just 2 years ago. And even when they did, we had to pay for that inclusion by also letting them include a heinous piece of legislation in our Human Rights Code, which gives parents the right to pull their kids from their schools if they don't like the fact that they're being taught about the inherent equality of people on the basis of any difference, including sexual orientation or transgendered and transsexual issues. So we know that when it's not specifically included, there is inherently underneath that failure to include that language ongoing discrimination. And that's what we need to say no to, and that's what we must insist stop. And so that's why Bill C-389 is so important, not only to those national organizations that are subject to the Canadian Bill of Rights, but to all Canadians at every different setting. So I would just like to end by saying very quickly, giving my tremendous gratitude, first of all, to that very small group of Conservative MPs who chose to vote for this bill, and to that larger group of Liberals who also chose to vote for this bill, and to the Bloc Québécois who voted unanimously in favor of this bill, and of course to the NDP caucus and our own Linda Duncan, who voted unanimously in favor of this bill, and of course finally to Bill 6A, who brought this bill forward and made the Canadian House of Commons talk about this issue and educate Canadians. And finally, most importantly, because the elimination of discrimination ultimately arises from our own ability to understand, appreciate, and embrace our differences. And because that can only happen through education, I want to thank the courageous members of Canada's trans community for coming out, telling the rest of us who they are, telling us about who they are, and making us all understand that they are us and we are them, and we need to protect and embrace each other. Thank you very much.